Happy 4th of July holiday weekend. Pop quiz. How many people have held the position of President of the United States? How many people have had that job? If you answered 45, it is understandable that you would answer that way. Everybody, including our current president, calls Donald Trump the 45th president of the United States. But you know what? If we are counting him as 45, technically that means we're counting Grover Cleveland twice, because he was the 22nd and 24th president of the United States. And I'm sure Grover Cleveland loves to be counted twice. But in fact, if we're talking about individual people, only 44 people, including the current president, have actually held that job. Here's another item on our quiz. How many presidential elections have we held in this country? The answer to that is 58. A lot of two-termers, even one four-termer. There have been 58 presidential elections since we started having them in the 1700s, in the year 1789. In terms of which American presidential election has been the most contentious, the most exhausting, the most politically divisive, that is up for a debate, and every century has its candidate. But in terms of which election was the most heavily scrutinized after the fact, that one, I think it's pretty clear we are living it right now. There were hints in the months before the November election that something was off, that something was going on in this one that was different. It all seemed, though, almost too big to grasp at the time, in the middle of what was already this incredibly interesting campaign, this incredibly politically volatile campaign. But in the middle of all that, there was also this external foreign dynamic at work, beginning with the news last summer that the email servers of the Democratic Party headquarters had been hacked by Russian hackers. And there was the news that voter registration systems in at least 2 states, or maybe 10 states, or maybe 20 states, had been probed or breached to some level by, again, hackers. By October, the month before the election, the United States intelligence agencies come out and said that while they couldn't agree on whether it was definitely the Russians behind those voter registration system hacks, they said they were confident that the Russians, the Russian government, had definitely directed the hacking of the DNC and other American political organizations in order to, quote, interfere with the U.S. election process. So the bizarre story, out of all the weird stuff that has ever happened in American elections, this story, our generation's story of the bizarre Russian hacking of our election, that story was at least starting to emerge in the weeks before the election. But at the same time, you know, as usual, as normal, there was this super contentious, fascinating presidential campaign going on. And that was very engrossing at the time. And it was not until after the election that the extent of the Russian involvement in our presidential election really came to light. And that started with a startling report from the Washington Post that came out the evening of Friday, December 9th. A report that kind of blew all other news right out of the water. So we had a whole show planned tonight that had honestly nothing to do with this topic, but then the Washington Post just dropped this astonishing bombshell within the last hour. Now, if you haven't seen this yet, I'm gonna put the headline up on the screen here so you can see it. I'm just gonna quote the lead directly here. The CIA has concluded in a secret assessment that Russia intervened in the 2016 election to help Donald Trump win the presidency, rather than just to undermine confidence in the U.S. electoral system. They're citing officials briefed on the matter. Quote, intelligence agencies have identified individuals with connections to the Russian government who provided WikiLeaks with thousands of hacked emails from the DNC and others, including Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman. This is stunning stuff, right? I mean, this is just broken within the last hour in the Washington Post. They're reporting that the CIA not only concluded that the Russians intervened in the election, stole information, publicized stolen information to help Donald Trump win the presidency, but the CIA gave its information about Russia to the leadership in the House and the Senate. And the White House wanted to make a big public bipartisan stand against it, and Republicans said no. Mitch McConnell specifically said no. No, don't tell the public. And so we held the election with the leadership in Congress knowing full well what Russia was doing, and we all went to vote while they sat on that. Until now, until the Post published this tonight. That was Friday night, December 9th, 2016. Breaking news from the Washington Post. The first of many Friday nights when I would have to work late. Basically, since then, since December 9th, we have been in kind of a sustained period of very distracting, very engrossing political crisis. This has felt like a sustained political crisis. As since then, we have learned more and more and more and more about the extent of Russian involvement in the election and the investigations into the Trump campaign's contacts with Russia, both during and after the campaign. Watch the date stamps on these as these fly by. Just as we were coming on the air, we got news that the former CIA director, James Woolsey, tonight has abruptly quit the Trump transition team with no explanation. Tonight, after saying for weeks that there would be no Senate or House investigation of this matter, the Senate Intelligence Committee finally said, yeah, we'll look into this. All of a sudden, this is starting to feel like the most important political story, certainly in the world, with 1 week to go before we are supposed to swear in Donald Trump as President of the United States. The New York Times has just published a story titled "Intercepted Russian Communications, Part of Inquiry into Trump Associates." This is obviously a very inflammatory, very hot story. These new details coming out the eve of the inauguration is a bombshell. Okay, we have some major breaking news this evening. We have just been notified within the last minutes, while we were in our commercial break there, that the acting Attorney General of the United States has just been fired. Okay, we've got some breaking news. A national security story just posted by the Washington Post about National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and his contacts with Russia. So we have some breaking news tonight that goes to the question not just of whether or not the National Security Advisor is about to be fired, but it also goes to how many people in the new administration knew the kind of trouble that National Security Advisor Michael Flynn was in. How many people knew about that and when they knew it? I want to bring you some breaking news that the New York Times just posted. This has just gone up since we've been on the air. I've just been marking it up with my trusty highlighter. Let me just, we haven't prepared any graphics on this or anything, but let me just tell you what they've just reported, directly relevant to what we need to talk to Congressman Schiff about and what we were just discussing. Trump campaign aides had repeated contacts with Russian intelligence, is the headline. The operative word there being campaign. This is during the campaign. This is during the election. There's also some brand new breaking news right now from the Wall Street Journal. Can we put this article up on the screen, please? Did we make a full screen out of this? Yes, thank you. You see the headline there, "Spies Keep Intelligence from President Trump." They're not showing him that stuff because they're not sure, in short, if he can be trusted with it. He's the president. The Washington Post breaking news just this evening that will, frankly, tie your socks in a knot. If you were thinking that maybe the whole Trump-Russia thing was going to be investigated impartially and aggressively by Congress. The two Republican chairmen of the intelligence committees in the House and the Senate, they have both tonight admitted to the Washington Post that they have been calling reporters off the record at the request of the White House to tell reporters that there's nothing to these stories. We interrupt this regularly scheduled broadcast for some breaking news tonight regarding Attorney General Jeff Sessions. We have just learned that Attorney General Jeff Sessions has agreed to amend his testimony. In his testimony at his confirmation hearing in the Senate in January, he now famously failed to disclose meetings he had with a Russian government official when he was asked about Trump campaign meetings with Russian government officials. Jeff Sessions told the Senate he didn't meet with any Russians, but he did. He now says he will go back and change his testimony. We are following the breaking news tonight that the fired National Security Advisor, retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, was fired from the Trump administration after only 24 days on the job. Tonight, he is asking for immunity from prosecution in exchange for his testimony in the Trump-Russia scandal. We have to start tonight with a little bit of breaking news, which has just been published by the Washington Post. Washington Post reports that a FISA warrant was issued last summer to monitor Carter Page's communications while he was an advisor to the Trump campaign. I'm never going to get another Friday night off in my life. I'm telling you, Friday nights are very news-heavy in the Trump administration. According to tonight's front page scoop in the Washington Post, Mike Flynn was warned explicitly that his conversations with Russian officials were, quote, undoubtedly being monitored by the FBI and by the NSA. There are interesting questions about what's happening with the Department of Justice and Paul Manafort, right? Is Jeff Sessions involved in any work at the Department of Justice concerning Paul Manafort, or is he recused? We can report tonight that the Justice Department will not say. We started asking yesterday. We asked throughout the day today. We have asked it 5 times in 5 different ways, including me making the request myself personally multiple times in as many different ways as I could think of it. They will not say whether or not he's recused. He is recused on Flynn, they say. He is recused on things related to the Trump campaign broadly. They won't say about Manafort. So we have some news to break tonight. Another subpoena has been issued as part of the ongoing investigations into President Trump's associates. Again, NBC News reporting exclusively tonight that federal investigators have subpoenaed records related to a $3.5 million loan taken out by former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort last year. We got much more to come tonight, and actually, because this is our life now, new substantive breaking news has just happened in the last couple of minutes. Because no night is complete anymore without several new major breaking news stories about the administration. Just in the last few minutes, we've gotten this new reporting from the New York Times, quoting from the Times. Michael Flynn told President Trump's transition team weeks before the inauguration that he was under federal investigation for secretly working as a paid lobbyist for Turkey during the campaign. It's happened again. All set to do a very specific show today. A block, B block, C block, all planned out, people booked, ready to go, scripts in. We know our reporting, we're ready. And all planned out. New breaking news. Throw everything out the window. This is the new schedule. This is how we work now. You wait long enough into the evening without getting too drunk to pay attention to the news, and you'll find that something breaks and changes your plans. Monday evening, it was President Trump passing on classified intelligence to the Russians in the Oval Office. Tuesday night, it was the existence of a memo from fired FBI Director James Comey describing a conversation in which he says the president asked him to back off the FBI investigation of former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn. Last night, it was the appointment of a special counsel to take over the Trump-Russia investigation. Now it's the 4th day of the week, and so now we got a new one. Tonight's scoop comes courtesy of Michael Schmidt at the New York Times. And this story that he's just broken tonight, that's on the front page of the New York Times website, is that in addition to the alleged direct pressure by the president on Director Comey to kibosh the Mike Flynn Trump-Russia investigation, apparently the president, or reportedly the president, called the FBI director and pressured him to put out public word about Trump not personally being under investigation. NBC News reports tonight that Jared Kushner is now under scrutiny in the FBI's Trump-Russia probe. This is according to multiple U.S. officials. Those officials telling NBC News tonight that Jared Kushner is a person of interest.
Welcome back to another Friday night of what seems like extraordinary news from the Trump-Russia inquiry, beginning with Reuters reporting that Special Counsel Robert Mueller is taking over the grand jury inquiry into Michael Flynn and the lobbying Flynn did for Turkey without registering as the agent of a foreign government, which is required under law. The AP then, with that report that Mueller could expand the probe to include Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein for their roles in the firing of the FBI director. If Mueller wants to go in that direction, the Deputy AG, as we were just discussing, says Mueller has room to run. The AP reporting Mueller also taking over the criminal probe involving the former Trump campaign manager, Paul Manafort.
I mean, talk about dot connecting. This is I feel like this is one of those moments where we've been kind of bushwhacking through the forest for a long time, and all of a sudden we just came out onto a clearing and we can see where we are. It's really sort of a landmark moment in terms of understanding this investigation, I think.
Great to be back. And because we have to begin tonight, naturally, the universe has welcomed me back with late-breaking Trump-Russia news that has just broken in the Washington Post within the last hour. According to tonight's Washington Post, yet another senior serving national security official in the U.S. government has reportedly now told associates that the president directed him, the president told him to intervene with the FBI to try to stop the Trump-Russia investigation. The new reporting tonight from the Washington Post, again, just out in the last hour, concerns not James Comey, but the nation's top intelligence official, the director of national intelligence, appointed by President Trump, former Senator Dan Coats. Tonight, we have this brand new reporting from the New York Times about CIA Director Mike Pompeo and Trump National Security Advisor Mike Flynn. It concerns the question of what happened in the 18 days between the time when the acting Attorney General Sally Yates warned the White House that Mike Flynn was vulnerable to Russian blackmail. What happened in the 18 days between when Yates gave that warning and when the White House finally fired him? This is your life, America. This is what your life has been like since December. Do you wonder why you've been a little stressed out over the past few months? Have you been following this news? It has been a long but gratifying 7 months for journalism, particularly the nonstop, it feels like nonstop breaking news from our excellent national treasure, world-class American newspapers like the Washington Post and like the New York Times. We have, as a country, we have covered a lot of ground over the last 7 months or so here on this show, covering these breaking news updates every night as these stories have just broken night after night after night. Over the rest of this hour tonight, we're going to be not just looking at where we've been and what we've learned over this remarkable 7-month period in American history. We're also going to be zeroing in on the major things to look out for as the investigations into this current administration continue. So, happy Independence Day. Stay with us tonight. This is going to be fun.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.